Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm James, continuing on with our Balsa USA Stingray 120 build. In this video, I'm going to be installing or constructing the servo mounting bays for the tail section. I'm going to be putting a servo for the elevator and the rudder back here. I'm going to be using these Hitec Ultra Torque servos. These are HS 645 MGs. And I talked a little bit about these, I think, in my last video in this series. And the reason these are going to go back here is because I am using the DLE-20 rear exhaust, the RA gas engine, and it's a little bit of a heavier setup because it's got the, as you know, it has the ignition module and it has its own battery and such, so it tends to be a little bit heavier than sort of an equivalent size or equivalent power, 4-stroke or 2-stroke engine. So because of that, I want to distribute some of the weight toward the tail section to help balance the plane as needed. All right, so let me show you how I'm going to do this. So here's the plan, and you noticed here it has push rod outlets. So this is the location where the push rods would exit the fuselage if I were going to install the servos up in the front of the plane. And I thought this would be a good spot here to sort of set the center of the servos, the center of the servo arm at these two locations. So as you can see on the plan here, there's two slots shown. And let me move my camera a little bit if I can. There we go. So you have this push rod outlet, you have this one here, and that one's going to correspond to the rudder control right back there. And then you have the one above it, which is going to be for the elevator. Okay, right here. Of course, here's our elevator. And the plan shows them on both sides of the plane, if you will. Actually, this one, it's kind of hard to tell, but what it's going to be is the right side of the plane is going to have the elevator control horn, and then the left side of the plane is going to have the rudder control horn. So the way I'm going to set this up is just roughly, it's going to be like this, and it's going to be sort of a flush mount sticking out of the side of the fuselage here. And I'm going to center it somewhere like right about here for the rudder on the left side. And then I'm going to do sort of an opposite orientation for the elevator on the other side. So the two servos are going to sit in here inside the plane, sort of like this. Okay. And they're going to be angled because the fuselage is angled. And there is enough room in here. I already checked it. There is enough room inside the fuselage. So it's going to be, let me see where it's going to be. It'll be, let me move my camera again. So it's going to be something like, looking at the bottom of the plane, I may not have it perfectly oriented, but one will be in sort of, you can just imagine it being inside the airplane like this, and then the other one is going to be kind of the mirror image, if you will, or the kind of going this way inside there. So this should be pretty easy to locate, and I'm going to use the plans. Obviously, I'm going to measure off the plans, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to just drop a vertical measurement sort of, like I said, kind of like right in the middle of these two slots, and I'll just measure from the top for each one of those. And then at those two locations, that'll be the center of, that'll be the axis, or where the, if you look at it, will be where the screw is for the control arm, and the servo will be in here sort of like right there. And then I'm just going to cut out a window into the side of the fuselage, big enough to accommodate the servo and then the mounting kind of tabs here also. And then what I'm going to use is this basswood. And thanks a lot for everybody who pointed out how stupid I am. I was calling this basswood. It's basswood. It's just basically a hardwood. And I'm going to, on the inside of the fuselage, inside here, I'm going to cut two rails, kind of mounting rails for each side. So I'll have a rail in here, and then I'll have another one obviously on this side. And that's what the servos are going to screw into. So those are going to go in like this. Something like that. Of course, the servo will be here. And I realize I'm not perfectly centered here in my drawing, but you get the picture. And then on the outside of those two mounting rails, I'm going to reinforce it with just some 1/4 inch balsa material on the outside, just to help reinforce it like this. And you won't see this. So all we're going to see, actually you're not going to see anything because the servo is going to be in here, but when we set it in there, all we're going to see is this mounting, kind of like these areas here where those two mounting rails are. But then inside there's going to be this other 1/4 inch piece just to help strengthen it. And I'm going to use just 5-minute epoxy. Should be pretty easy. And I'm just going to do sort of the opposite on the other side, and that should work out pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll get these mounted, and then I'm going to take them off because I'm going to be, doing other things, covering the plane and such. So I'm just going to get these things set to where they need to be, and then I'll just take them off and we'll install them toward the end of the build. Okay, then just a little bit of a change up. I was just checking the servo to make sure, but as I mentioned, sort of the center of the push rod exit would be somewhere like right around here, like this. And if I just take the servo, and servo's going to be sitting in here something like about like that. It's going to be sitting inside. And then I'm probably going to be a little bit too close on this side over here. So I'm just going to move it back a little bit. I'll move it, probably have to move it somewhere around here, which is going to have it lined up like right around here somewhere. Oops, right around here. So it's just going to move it back maybe like right somewhere in here. Okay, no big deal. And that way I'll have room for it because it's going to be up against this side also, right? So I don't want it, I want them as far back as possible because I want to get the benefit of having that weight back here. But I also need to have room for them to be stuck in there. So I'm going to erase my little marks I did because I'm going to move it over. So I think I'm going to go about 3/4 of an inch sort of in front of this, the end of that piece right there. Right about there for my center line. Okay, well, the epoxy has cured, and the next step is I want to at least temporarily mount the servos, because I want to drill and set the screws. And then I'm going to take the screws out and put some thin CA to help strengthen the wood and the threads. And then I'll just set these aside for the later steps. But before I do that, I wanted to mention this little guy right here. You'll see that on most servos, and you're quite familiar with this if you've done this before, but you know, most servos have this, I don't know, this little rubber kind of like protector on here on the side of the servo. And what that does is it makes it a little bit difficult to set the servo down into the opening. And because what happens is when you try to set the servo in there, that little, if you see that in there, that little piece, let me grab my flashlight, that little kind of rubber grommet or whatever you want to call that thing, and the wire itself kind of gets caught up below the mounting beam. And so it's difficult to sort of get the servo in without sort of jamming it inside there. So there's two ways to sort of get around that. Let me bring this back out, put it back this way. One of them is to just spread apart, kind of make the opening actually wider. But you need to be careful because you only have obviously so much space with the little tabs on the side here, so you don't want to come out too far. You know, you don't want to come out too far. You need to make sure you have enough wood to grab onto with the screws. The other way to do it, and the other way that I typically do it, is actually kind of just make a little notch under this one here, so that when, again, like when I was showing it inside here, let me pop this in here one more time, because you kind of want to, what you're going to want is you put it in and you kind of bring it in like this, you kind of rotate it, and it can't rotate because it gets caught on that little wire there. So what you'll do is, what I do is I cut a little notch, kind of just round out a little notch on that side to give a little bit of space for this wire to sort of move up into as I kind of push the servo down, and it just kind of plugs in. So the way I'm going to do that is I have this little roto tool. I got this at Harbor Freight, and you know, obviously you can use Dremel or the Proxxon, but this is just a little Bauer roto tool, and it came with a little set of cutting, kind of these little cutting points and stuff for wood and metal. But I'm going to use this. Oop, I got to plug it in. Hold on. All right, here we go. So I'm going to use this just to cut like a nice little round sort of notch in here. And there's other ways to do it. Obviously, you can use your X-Acto blade or your hobby blades. You can use kind of sandpaper, just to give yourself enough, just kind of a big enough notch to slide that servo in. Well, what I just realized is that these little rubber grommets actually stick out a little bit further than the little tabs on the servo. So that means the servo won't sit down all the way. So I'm going to have to just trim out a little bit on each side. I'm going to have to trim out a little bit on each side here so this will set down inside of there. Okay, well, there we have it. Both of these are now installed. And like I said, I'm going to take them out, and I'll take them out and I'll put some thin CA on the wood there so I can strengthen that wood up and set the servos aside. But this gives you kind of an idea how it's going to be. Both of them are sitting in back there, and then here's sort of a top view. All right, well, that's going to be about it for this video, and we will see you next time.